on regular radio.
Back live to Hotheads, where activism happens. On the phone, we have a very special guest, an author. He's written 3 books. He's also a journalist. He's got a very popular website. You can find his information online, davesweb.cnc hosts. You can just put a Google in for Dave McGowan. And the series that we want to talk about is Inside the LC, the strange but mostly true story of Laurel Canyon and the birth of the hippie generation. Hey, Dave, are you on the phone with us?
I am indeed.
Welcome to our show. We're kind of running out of time, but we have time, obviously. There's a lot of information on your website. I just wanted to get right to it. Can you give us a quick synopsis for someone that doesn't understand what this series is all about?
Well, yeah, okay. I mean, first there's the mainstream story of Laurel Canyon, which, I mean, a lot of people don't even know that. You know, when most people think of the music scene and the hippies and flower children and all of that was in full bloom in the 1960s, they immediately think of Haight-Ashbury up in San Francisco, and it's generally assumed that was kind of the birthplace of all of that, which is actually not true. It was actually born right here in the Laurel Canyon neighborhood of L.A. a couple of years before it migrated up north. So most people aren't even aware of sort of the mainstream story of where that whole scene was born. And then what my series does is take an even more in-depth look at that scene to find all of the hidden threads and basically ask the question of whether it was in fact an organic, sort of grassroots movement, or whether the whole thing was sort of a manipulated creation of the intelligence community.
And when you say intelligence, you're talking about military intelligence. I've read your whole series. I'm always on my checking your page to see if you come out with a new chapter, like so many, probably thousands and millions of people check it out all the time, because you don't update too often, and when you do, it's something that I read from beginning to end. I want to talk about, it seems like a lot of the stuff that you've uncovered is now almost kind of going mainstream, and they're kind of revealing some of the information. There's a new movie called The Canyons coming out with Lindsay Lohan. Have you heard about that?
I didn't know that.
Oh, okay. It's gotten big news the last few days, and it's kind of interesting. I don't really know what the movie's about. There seems to be some kind of porn connection, but it's kind of weird how the name of the movie is The Canyon, or The Canyons, I think it is. And like even recently, Dennis Hopper was reportedly came out and said that his father was in military intelligence. Looking at some of the characters, can we talk about? I mean, I know a lot of people it's already old hat to them. But tell us about Frank Zappa. Tell us about Jim Morrison. Tell us about their background, who they were, who their family members were.
Jim Morrison was actually the son of a very prominent Navy admiral by the name of Stephen Morrison, who was actually overseeing. He was actually in charge of the fleet that was involved in the Tonkin Gulf incident. So he was sort of the presiding officer over the incident in Tonkin Gulf that plunged us headlong into the Vietnam War. At the very same time, that his son was emerging on the Sunset Strip as this very prominent sort of anti-war type figure, anti-establishment figure. And Frank Zappa's dad was a career a chemist at the Edgewood Arsenal, which is actually where Frank spent his formative years. They actually lived on base in housing on the base, and he went to school on the base, and basically spent the first quite a few years of his life actually growing up, in the facility that is home to, U.S. Longtime home of the U.S. chemical warfare. So, he had a rather interesting background as well. I should probably also mention here, since you mentioned that I hadn't posted anything lately, there are actually quite a few more chapters that I have completed. it's actually due to come out in book form later this year. At the beginning, near the beginning of last year, I signed a contract with a publisher in the UK who wants to turn it into a book, and as part of that deal, I agreed to provide them with quite a few additional chapters that will be exclusive to the book, because obviously they were concerned that this material has now been circulating on the web for quite a while and has gained a pretty large readership. So to sweeten the pot, so to speak, I am giving them like 8 to 10 additional chapters. I've actually finished like 6 or 7 of them.
And what are those? What are those chapters about? Like, what are some of the people involved in?
One of them is on John Kay and his band Steppenwolf. One of them is, in fact, on Frank Zappa. One is going to be on Arthur Lee and his band Love. One on Brian and Dennis Wilson and the Beach Boys. There's an additional chapter on the Laurel Canyon, on curious deaths that have been connected to or committed in Laurel Canyon. There is going to be an additional chapter on the Vito Polikas dance crew that was such a key part of sort of launching that whole scene.
Kind of a cult.
And, yeah. And there's going to be actually a chapter on a serial killer other than Charles Manson, because Charles Manson's woven throughout the story. But as it turns out, there's another rather notorious serial killer who had a number of curious connections to Laurel Canyon. And then the final chapter is going to be sort of like an epilogue afterward kind of thing, like, as the story continues. And that's going to look at the how the scene was influenced as towards the late 70s and into the 80s, the sounds from Laurel Canyon started to be replaced by the punk and new wave bands, that whole new genre. And so there's going to be a little chapter at the end that sort of talks about that transition and the strong influences that were at play in that, which is a very interesting story. Have you ever heard the name Miles Copeland?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
He's like a sort of almost legendary CIA operative.
Wasn't he Stuart Copeland's? Yeah, he was Stuart Copeland's father, right, from the Police?
Stuart Copeland, Miles Copeland III, and Ian Copeland. All three of them were sons of Miles, this legendary. I mean, this is a guy.
So you're basically saying, I'm sorry, you're basically saying that these musicians, because all of their fathers had in common that they were involved in some sort of military or military intelligence career, therefore these musicians were subtly trying to prop up their parents' military dogma? That's your kind of your claim, right? Well,
I don't make any claims. I basically just put I put the facts out there and leave it to the readers to draw their own conclusions. I just find it very hard to believe that it's just all coincidental that if you look at every one of these people, you can see very strong military intelligence connections in their background.
Yeah, Dave, I want to weigh in on this because when I start to bring this up with a lot of people, the first thing that I hear, they say, "So what? So what if Jim Morrison's father was an admiral? So what?" And then I say, "Go read Dave's series. Read the 15 parts, and come back and tell me if Dave isn't a historian documenting facts that are very enlightening." And that's really what you're doing.
I mean, a lot of parents were in the military at that point, right? I mean, that was a more viable career choice, and a lot more people were participating in the military.
CIA,
yeah, in World War II. I mean, that's the age of their parents. I'm sure a lot of people in that era were involved in the military, either going to war or, getting up in rank.
How many famous people do you know that moved from D.C. in a 2 or 3 year period and then moved to L.A. and became famous rock stars within a 5-year period?
Oh, and they all moved from D.C. How many?
Most of them.
How many?
Let's talk about them. Who are some of the people that moved from D.C. to Laurel Canyon, and what were the years, Dave?
Excuse me?
A lot of these people,
yeah, a lot. But I mean, and it's also it's not just the military background. You know, it's also the fact that there was a top secret classified military intelligence establishment in full operation right there in the middle of Laurel Canyon, surrounded by all of these musicians. You know, I mean, is that also a coincidence that not only are they all from military families, but they all chose to cluster around the military intelligence establishment? You know, I mean, where do the coincidences end? You know, at what point do you say that's just too many coincidences for it?
So then, if it's not a coincidence, and you think it was orchestrated, that these people were therefore trying to be pro-military secretly, and like through subconscious messaging. Like I don't understand how you go there. Go ahead.
You basically, the premise is this: if you look at the pictures of the first anti-war protests, they were all kids in suit and ties, the best of America, kids at Harvard University. Within 4 years, those images weren't being shown in the media. What you were seeing is a bunch of hippies. So the anti-war movement became the anti-war movement. It's kind of like how a lot of us freedom fighters are upset about.
I mean, there was a lot of corrupt shit going on in the '60s. I mean, a lot of crazy stuff was happening, and COINTELPRO was fully in effect. And it's not totally outside of the realm of possibility. I still am a little skeptical, but I think it's interesting. I think it is some interesting coincidences. But I mean, I think the government and the media would have found anything they needed to discredit the anti-war movement. I don't think it was even necessary for there to be some orchestrated thing. First of all, and that's also like implying a lot about all of those musicians, and all of their entire catalog of music being kind of a farce.
Because Dave,
that's a big claim.
That you're making claims that don't exist without reading the articles. Yes. Okay. Dave's not saying that. Dave, would you say that a lot of times a lot of these musicians could even be victims, and that there were people behind them who were the managers, who were the record label owners, that were expecting them to
absolutely, yeah.
And a lot of them were killed.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some of the.
And then there's also the question of, I mean, if these people, a lot of people have said, well, they were probably rebelling against their parents' generation, and that's why so many of them came from the authoritarian kind of backgrounds. But if you're going to take that position, then how do you explain why they never spoke out about that? Why did Jim Morrison never once even reveal who his father was, let alone denounce the fact that his father.
Why would you name your father? How many artists are naming their fathers in their music? I mean,
when your father is famous, when your father is Colin Powell.
Because you're trying to define yourself as opposite from your father, because that's like your whole thing as a rebellious musician.
Do you know what Jim Morrison actually did, though, whenever he was asked about his family?
What?
He told interviewers that they were all dead. He told interviewers.
Yeah, he reinvented himself. He reinvented himself. He didn't want to be associated with
that. He did that so that he did not have to answer any further questions about them.
Yeah, well, that too. He didn't want that to be a part of his identity.
Why?
I don't know. Maybe because he wanted to be an artist.
And you're an anti-establishment.
Why do artists do a lot of stuff?
Why do you not use that? Why do you not use that to speak out about what your own father has done?
It does. I mean, MIA, for example, is a rapper that has a lot of political music and is from Sri Lanka, and her father was involved in the Tamil Tigers, revolutionaries group and stuff. She doesn't really talk about that much. I don't think that means that she's pro that. I think she, I don't know. I think people are artists, and you can't necessarily decide why they do anything. But it brings up some interesting questions, and I think you've done some really cool research. It's obviously that you care a lot about it. And are you a fan of these artists' music as well? Are you a fan?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's the music that I grew up with. Right. I mean, I grew up with just idolizing these people. Yeah, this was one of the hardest journeys that I've ever undertaken as a journalist, because these were the people that I grew up thinking were the heroes of the 1960s. These were people that I've looked up to all my life until like the last 5 years when I started doing this research.
And I
have all of their original albums on vinyl in my collection. I mean.
How do you get all?
Yeah, this is my era. This was not something that was undertaken lightly.
Right.
You know, I mean.
How have you compiled all this information? I always wonder how, like, because I'm interested in this stuff, and it's hard to find information. How do you get this firsthand knowledge that you seem to have that no one else has? And that turns out to be so much true. Like, when I'm looking at you, I compare so many people out there. Your stuff seems to be true. It comes out, like, look at the Mackenzie Phillips. You talked about John Phillips, and then Mackenzie Phillips comes out and talks about how her father molested her. Like, the stuff you said it before this actually is confirmed oftentimes. How do you get this information?
Yeah, it is kind of weird. Just in the last few years, some news, stuff has come out here and there, just confirming stuff that I have put out, which is kind of I don't know. It's always a little eerie. Well, number one, I'm a voracious reader. I read everything I can get my hands on. And number two, one of the reasons that I put this out on the web, one of the reasons that I had stopped writing books for many years and decided to just go with a web-based thing, is because it's sort of an interactive type of thing, and I'm constantly getting tips from readers, like daily, pouring into my email box, saying, hey, have you looked at this guy? Have you looked at this guy? And pointing out different articles and things to me that that otherwise I would have never known about. So a lot of it, I mean, the initial idea and the impetus and stuff was all mine, but as it's progressed, a lot of the information has come from readers. And, of course, you have to be very careful with that because a lot of people send in, like, personal anecdotes, say, hey, I personally knew so-and-so, and I disregard all those because there's no way to verify them, and if you start throwing all that stuff in, then you're basically just going to discredit yourself. Right. So I have to be able to independently verify what people send in, but if people send me a tip and I am able to independently verify it, then I will absolutely use it.
And you have a whole website here called, you call it the Center for an Informed America. It's davesweb.cnchost.com. And you have other articles on here, too. What are some of the other things you feature on your website?
Let's see. There's a series on 911 because everybody has a series on 911. There's a series on the moon landing. I also have a couple of previous books. One on serial killers and one on.
Who is your favorite serial killer?
This is my favorite serial killer.
I'm gonna have a favorite.
Do I have to have a?
Ted Bundy.
I've never gotten that question before.
Really?
Who's your favorite serial killer?
I think Ted Bundy was pretty terrifying. He's probably the most sinister. I don't know. I also am fascinated by serial killers and stuff. So I guess we have one thing in common. I mean, his mother just passed away like 2 days ago. Ted Bundy's mother did.
Louise Bundy. She was still alive up until a couple days ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well.
Up in Tacoma, Washington, I believe. Yeah, she passed away.
Speaking of the murders, like L.A. to me has always been a mob town, to me, and there's so many strange murders. Whether you look at the Manson or the other murders, like tell us about some of the famous celebrities who've been murdered under weird circumstances, and some of the murders maybe people aren't aware of that have happened, especially during that time period in Laurel Canyon.
Well, the two most high-profile murders connected to Laurel Canyon are, of course, the Manson killings, and all of the people involved in that, both victims and perpetrators, were Laurel Canyon regulars. Jay Sebring, Sharon Tate, Wojtek Frykowski, and Abigail Folger. Two of the victims actually lived in Laurel Canyon in a house just right across from Mama Cass's house, in fact. And they knew each other. And Manson was said to have actually hung out at Mama Cass's. So, I mean, these people were all in that, they were all deeply involved in the Laurel Canyon scene. The murders, of course, took place a couple canyons over in Benedict Canyon on Cielo Drive, but all of the people involved were very much part of the Laurel Canyon scene. And the other most high-profile one was what has been dubbed the Wonderland murders. that John Holmes and various others were involved in that involved the bludgeoning, just the brutal bludgeoning deaths of 4 reputed drug dealers who lived in and who lived in Laurel Canyon and serviced the various people in there. In fact, one of the members of Three Dog Night has said that he was supposed to go over there and make a pickup that very night that the murders went down. So those are two of the probably the 2 bloodiest mass murders in LA history, and both of them directly connected to the Laurel Canyon scene. One of them occurred right in Laurel Canyon. And there's been a number of others. Ramon Navarro, a famous silent film star, was brutally murdered in Laurel Canyon on Halloween night, like in 1968 or so. An actress by the name of Inga Stevens, I think, was killed in Laurel Canyon, and just a whole slew of people connected to it. You know, there's been bodies dumped in Laurel Canyon. There was Maureen Habe's body, or Habe, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, body was killed and dumped in Laurel Canyon during its heyday. Another unidentified girl was killed and dumped in Laurel Canyon, and there were just bodies turning up everywhere. You know, people being murdered in the canyon, and people very closely connected to the canyon dying violent deaths elsewhere. I mean, just a whole string of them that are all listed and detailed in the book. And of course, there's a number of musicians from that era that died very young and very violent deaths. So, yeah, it's a very bloody trail. I mean, for a scene that's known for, you know, flower power and peace and love and understanding and whatnot, it just has just an unbelievably violent, you know, backstory to it that a lot of people are not aware of. It's just incredible how much, you know, death and misery was visited on that canyon during the decade or so of its heyday.
And do you still think that kind of is going on, like in terms of, not in Laurel Canyon so much, but I look at someone like Alex Jones and I really question who was really behind him. Do you kind of see that?
Yeah, you know, that guy, there's a lot of mixed opinion on him. I am not a fan myself. I mean, yeah, I don't know. And David Icke, too, is another one that's, I mean, these guys are like cottage industry, you know? I mean, they got the slew of books, and they got their DVDs, and they got their websites, and they got their radio shows, and they got their lucrative speaking fees, and these people are making a lot of money off of selling what they're selling, you know? Yeah. And, I'm not a big fan. You know, I think when people have that much reach, there's a reason why they have that much reach. You know, and particularly when they're throwing all these, you know, just what to me are absolutely absurd elements into the storyline. You know, with David Icke, it's the shape-shifting reptilian aliens. You know. Yeah. And that's, you know, I mean, guys like that just. I mean. They make it a lot harder for people like me to be taken seriously, you know. And I think that's the whole purpose. You know, that's what, because I'll start talking about something, you know, to somebody, and you know, their eyes will just like glaze over, and I'll get a response like, "Well, you know, that all sounds really good, but you know that people that believe that also think that, you know, lizards are running the world or whatever." You know?
Yeah, and, poisoning the well.
And you can't really argue with that, because a lot of people do believe that, because people like David Icke are out selling it, and they're deliberately putting elements like that into what would be an otherwise fairly credible story to. You know, it's guilt by association.
That's it. That's exactly what's going on. That's the really, I believe, what your story on the LC is about. Guilt by association. That people that wanted to be against the war were now lumped in with these rebels who are out of control in the music industry, and beyond that, the flower power hippie movement. And it continues.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Dave.
Going back to what you said earlier, you know, I mean, you're absolutely right. The original anti-war movement was born on college campuses, and it was college professors and button-down college kids with crew cuts, and you know, they were the face of the anti-war movement, and they were the face of America. And I believe that the hippies were, and most people don't even realize that. Most people now think that the hippie movement was synonymous with the anti-war movement, but it wasn't initially. The hippie movement sort of usurped the anti-war movement and became the new face of the anti-war movement. And all of a sudden, you had these people out here representing the anti-war movement that were just completely foreign to Middle America in every way possible. The hairstyles, the clothing styles, the music they listened to, their sexual attitudes towards sex and drugs and rock and roll, and I mean everything about it was just foreign to mainstream America, and I believe that was quite deliberate. They wanted to put the most unappealing face on the anti-war movement that they possibly could. And they succeeded to such an extent that people now, to this day, believe that the hippie movement and the anti-war movement were one and the same, and they absolutely were not.
True. Just like the Beatles started out clean cut, and we know where they went. I mean, it's the same exact thing. Things, and it all seemed to happen all at once in this country, which is, I think it set back a lot of the movements we've worked on here too. It's like we're in this room. We want marijuana reform. We think that the war on drugs is wrong, and it's the kind of the same type of scenario where they made something that was kind of mainstream look like it was not mainstream anymore, and that it also had popular appeal because it's rebel now, you know. So you're dividing and conquering. That's really what you're doing. I see it happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And the anti-war movement was not the only prominent, protest movement at the time. There was a very active women's lib movement. There was a Black Panther movement. There was a Gray Panther movement, for elderly citizens. There were all kinds of people clamoring for their rights and for positive change in the country, and all of that really got usurped by the whole hippie flower child thing. Which is what people remember the 60s for being now, I mean, most people, that's what they associate the 1960s with, and all the rest of it's largely forgotten.
I appreciate your time today, Dave. I encourage everyone to check it out. Check out the website. Read the whole series, because I think that's the first place to go. Dave doesn't cram anything down your throat. He just shows you the history, and it's up to you to decide whether you agree with the premise that I came up with from reading it or not. But this is what I really like about you, Dave, is you present facts and you let people make up their own mind. It's not like Alex Jones. It's not like David Icke, these other jokers out there.
That's what I try to do. I mean, I put out there, and, I'm sure it's very obvious where my own beliefs lie. Any writer introduces his biases into his work. Anybody that says they don't is full of shit, but I don't try to, I don't try to hammer it over anybody's head. I put out the facts as I find them to be, and you draw your own conclusions, basically. It's what I try to do is basically just present. The thing with my work is that all of my material is drawn from the mainstream. All of my sources.
Do you cite your sources on your website? Can you do you cite your sources? So
What's that?
Do you cite your sources anywhere on your website?
I have not yet on the Laurel Canyon. On my earlier books and whatnot, I did, but no, on the Laurel Canyon, I have not. I have not put together that yet, but. All of my stuff is drawn from the mainstream. If you look through my serial killer book, you will not see in the references, you will not see, conspiracies.us.com or something. Yes. You'll see the LA Times and the Miami Herald and the Guardian in the UK, and very, very mainstream books, mainstream newspapers, and mainstream magazines. And, what I do is go through these stories and pick out the little hidden nuggets, the little facts that most authors just sort of toss out there as throwaway facts and deem to be insignificant and anomalies and whatnot. But what I have found is that if you collect enough of these facts and put them together, they begin to show very, very clear and distinct patterns. And they are not just throwaway facts or just, little aberrations. They're very important parts of the story. And, as the X-Files used to say, the truth is out there, but it's not going to be delivered on your front doorstep in your morning paper or broadcast on your TV unless you take the time to really go through, comb through all of that information, which
and
is what
draw
I
your own
do,
conclusions from it.
Find all the little, find all the little hidden trends that are going through there.
Thank you so much for being here on the show today. We really appreciate it. And you can check out the website is davesweb.cnchost.com.
One last quote. When is the book coming out?
I am not sure. I got 2 more chapters that I got to submit to them, and then I don't know, how long they're going to take at their end to do whatever proofreading and editing and formatting and cover design and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. They told me sometime this year. That's all they can tell me at this
all right.
point.
Well, keep us up to date. Yeah, keep us up to date. And thanks again for being on. And we'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Thank you for having me.
Unregular Radio.